Welcome back, my broom-riding brethren. Welcome back to Anonymous Crone. I am your hostess with the mostest, the resident crone on a throne, who may or may not have an emotional support raven hiding somewhere in the backyard. If you've ever caught your cat staring into an empty corner of the room at 3 a.m, and you thought, that's probably fine, well, today's episode is for you. So grab your favorite cup of tea, coffee, potion, or whatever mysterious beverage has been sitting on your altar for 2 days. Then pull in your favorite furry, feathered, or scaly companion, because today we're going to be talking about familiars. Now, before your cat suddenly starts demanding payment in tuna for magical services rendered, let's clear something up. Not every witch has a familiar, and not every black cat belongs to a witch. Although, if you ask most black cats, they'll probably tell you they own at least 3 witches. But today we're going to be separating fact from folklore, history from Hollywood, and magic from complete nonsense. We're going to travel through ancient civilizations, medieval Europe, Japanese legends, Scottish folklore, Norse mythology, and even dip our toes into modern pagan practice to discover where the ideas of familiars actually came from and why people have been fascinated by them for thousands of years. As most people know, dogs have a remarkable ability to notice things long before we do. Cats seem to stare directly into dimensions we'd rather not think about. Crows remember human faces. Ravens solve puzzles. Owls have inspired myths for centuries. Even snakes have long been associated with hidden wisdom. Animals have always occupied the strange space between our world and something just beyond our understanding. They've probably been laughing at us the whole damn time, too. So what exactly is a familiar? When people hear the word familiar, they immediately picture a witch with a black cat perched on her shoulder while she's standing there stirring a bubbling cauldron beneath a full moon. Hollywood certainly loves that image. Halloween decorations definitely love that image. Greeting card companies have made a fortune from that image. But a familiar wasn't simply just a pet. The word familiar comes from Latin familiaris, meaning belonging to the household or an intimate companion. Long before witches even entered the picture, the word simply describes someone or something that lived closely alongside you. Wikipedia states, in early folklore of the medieval and early modern periods, familiars, such as familiar spirits, also just meant close friend or companion. Eventually, though, in magical traditions, the word began referencing a spirit companion that worked alongside a practitioner. Notice I said spirit, and that's a very important distinction. Many traditions describe familiars as spirits that either temporarily inhabit an animal, appear in animal form, or just exist entirely on the spiritual plane. That means your sleepy Labrador who snores louder than your spouse is not automatically a familiar, although he still may be magical, especially if he somehow knows exactly when you're opening the cheese drawer. One of the biggest misconceptions in modern witchcraft is that every beloved pet automatically is your familiar. But most of us, we don't believe that's true, although your pet can absolutely become a magical companion. Animals are incredibly intuitive. A lot of our pets even join us during meditation, and some just insist on lying beside us during ritual. Others seem drawn into our sacred space. Some even become protective whenever energy work begins. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make them familiars, but it does make them wonderful companions. There's nothing lesser about that at all. Sometimes we forget that simply sharing life with another living creature is already a kind of magic. But spirit familiars are a little different. Across many magical traditions, they're described as intelligent spiritual beings that chose to assist the practitioner. Sometimes they're viewed as nature spirits, sometimes ancestral spirits, sometimes guides, sometimes beings connected to specific deity. And yes, during certain periods of history, they were unfortunately labeled as demons. As most things witchy have been labeled. We'll get to that dramatic chapter later because, trust me, medieval Europe had absolutely no chill. So, let's travel back a little further, though. Thousands of years before the witches were persecuted. Long before Salem, long before broomsticks, long before pointy hats that somehow became fashionable. Ancient Egypt had one of the deepest relationships between animals and humans anywhere in the ancient world. Cats protected grains from rodents. Ibises and other birds became symbols of wisdom. Falcons in particular, they represented kingship. Jackals watched over cemeteries. Sacred bulls embodied strength. Animals weren't simply animals. They carried divine qualities. And many priests believed certain animals could serve as intermediaries between humans and the gods. The god Bastet, often depicted with the head of a cat, represented protection, fertility, home, happiness, and the mystery of the sacred. Cats became so revered that harming one, even accidentally, could result in severe punishment and even death. Now imagine trying to explain to an ancient Egyptian that one day people would dress their cats in tiny Halloween costumes. The Greeks continued this connection. The goddess Hecate, our beloved torchbearer from episode 10, was frequently accompanied by dogs. Not because they were pets, because dogs were believed capable of sensing spirits approaching the crossroads. Many ancient stories describe dogs barking before supernatural events occurred. Even today, there are so many stories from people who swear their dogs reacted moments before someone's passed away, before earthquakes, or before strange paranormal experiences. Coincidence? Heightened senses? Or something spiritual?
What the dog doing?
Owls accompanied Athena. Ravens accompanied Apollo in certain traditions. Snakes became symbols of healing and transformation. Animals were not separate from spirituality. And in Rome, Romans believed in household spirits known as lairs. I did look up the pronunciation on Google and they said lairs, although I have heard it pronounced lares. Families have always honored protective spirits who watched over their home. Offerings were made, small shrines were kept. While these spirits weren't familiars in the witchcraft sense, they reinforced the ancient idea that unseen beings could share our living spaces. Across cultures separated by oceans, people kept coming to pretty much the same conclusions, that perhaps we're not entirely alone. Not in a horror movie kind of way, more like life has invisible layers, and occasionally those layers brush up against ours. Let's hop over to the Celtic lands. The Celts had enormous respect for animals. Each creature carried symbolism. Ravens brought prophecy. Stags represented sovereignty and the wild forest. Boars embodied courage. Salmon represented wisdom. Bunnies even carried deep magical significance. In Scottish and Irish folklore, hares were often believed capable of slipping between the human world and the other world. Some legends claimed witches could transform into hares. Others believed fairy women traveled in hare form. Imagine living in a tiny medieval village. You glance outside. There's one rabbit sitting in your garden. And then the next morning your butter has spoiled. And clearly that rabbit was a witch. That's where the medieval mind went. No one blamed poor crop rotation. No one questioned the weather. Nope, it was definitely that suspicious bunny. History is kind of weird. Actually, history is kind of hilarious. One thing you'll notice as we move through today's episode is that almost every culture gave animals magical importance. Different beliefs, different religions, yet animals consistently became messengers, teachers, protectors, and guides. Maybe humanity's always sensed something a little special about the creatures sharing this planet with us. Perhaps they noticed energies that we forgot how to receive. Or maybe they simply mastered the art of silently judging us all while pretending to nap. I mean, cats certainly have. I never met a cat that didn't look at me as though I owed it money. And speaking of cats, let's address the furry elephant in the room. Why are black cats so connected with witches? Well, because they were useful. Black cats hunted exceptionally well at night. They kept rodents away from the food storages. Older women often kept cats for practical reasons. Many of the same women also happened to know herbal medicine. They served as midwives, or they were healers, wise women, folk practitioners. And unfortunately, during times of fear, that combination became pretty suspicious. A woman who lived alone, owned a cat, knew herbs, and didn't always attend church, and maybe muttered to herself while gardening. Congratulations! According to certain people in the Middle Ages, you're clearly a witch. When we talk about familiars in history, we're also talking about one of the darkest chapters in European history. Thousands of innocent people lost their lives because of fear and superstition and politics. The stories we're about to discuss are fascinating, but the accusations were tragically real. So let's travel back to Europe between the 15th and 17th centuries. This was the height of the witch hunts. Fear was everywhere. Crops were failing. People were getting sick. Babies were dying. Livestock disappeared. Storms were destroying villages. And instead of looking for natural explanations, many communities looked for somebody to blame. Enter the village healer, the widow who lived alone, the herbalist, the midwife, the old woman with 6 cats, and suddenly ordinary animals became quote-unquote proof of witchcraft. Cats, dogs, toads, ferrets, weasels, owls, mice, even flies. If an animal seemed unusually attached to someone who was accused of witchcraft, people often believed it couldn't possibly be natural. It had to be a familiar spirit. One of the strangest beliefs during this period was that familiars were sent by the devil himself. According to accusations, these spirits took the shape of animals and lived with witches, helping them perform magic in exchange for food, blood, or loyalty. Wait, blood? Yep, that was actually part of many accusations. Investigators claim that witches fed their familiars from a special mark on their bodies called the witch's mark. But these marks? They were moles, or freckles, or birthmarks, or scars, or even skin tags. Imagine being arrested because you had a mole on your shoulder. One of the most famous English witch trials involved a woman named Elizabeth Clark in the 1640s. According to the testimony that was forced from her, keep that in mind, it was forced from her. She claimed to have several familiars with wonderfully peculiar names. There was Holt. There was Vinegar Tom. Then there was Sack and Sugar. There was News. And a creature called Jamara. I actually like that name. Now, can we just appreciate for 1 second that Vinegar Tom sounds less like a demon and more like someone who owns an antique shop? Imagine introducing your familiar. This is Shadow. This is Midnight. This is Raven. And this here is Vinegar Tom. Even the prosecutors must have been a little confused. Many of the familiars were described as cats, dogs, ferrets, mice, or creatures that looked almost, but not quite, like ordinary animals. Some supposedly spoke. I want a talking cat. No, I don't. Ugh, can you imagine? Anyways. Others just vanished into thin air. Some were said to climb walls. That'd be creepy. Others appeared and disappeared through keyholes. Were these real experiences? False confessions? Hallucinations? Dreams? Stories exaggerated under torture? Yeah. So that's how they got those confessions from these so-called witches. Stories exaggerated under torture. Let that sink in. But historians overwhelmingly agree that most of these confessions cannot be taken at face value because they were exaggerated and extracted through intimidation, sleep deprivation, or outright torture. And that makes them pretty unreliable, but still, they tell us something important. They reveal what people believed was possible. And belief is still a very powerful thing. Let's hop across the channel to Scotland. Scotland folklore has some wonderfully eerie tales of witches transforming into hares. Little bunny witches. This belief became so widespread that hunters sometimes carried silver bullets, not for werewolves, but for magical bunnies. One legend tells of a hunter who shot a hare in the leg. The next morning, an elderly woman in the village appeared with an injured leg. Naturally, everyone concluded she transformed into that hare. Personally, I might have asked first if she just simply fell in the garden, but apparently that wasn't nearly exciting enough. There are dozens of versions of this story throughout Scotland and Ireland. Sometimes it's a hare, sometimes it's a cat, sometimes it's a crow. The detail changes, but the lesson does not. Animals became symbols through which people explained the unexplained. Another famous creature from British folklore is the Grim. No, not the one from Harry Potter, although he's cool too. Long before modern fantasy, churchyards throughout England were said to have spectral black dogs that guarded sacred ground. Some people believed witches could communicate with these ghostly guardians. Others believed that the dogs themselves were protective spirits. Notice something interesting? Not every supernatural animal was evil. Some were guardians, some were helpers. Some did protect the living. That idea has survived into modern paganism far more strongly than the darker stories have. Now, let's talk about something that often surprises people. Familiars weren't always physical. In many magical traditions, especially ceremonial magic and later in occult practices, familiars were described as entirely spiritual beings. Nobody could see them. They might appear during meditation, or dreams, or trance work, rituals, or just deep spiritual experiences. Some practitioners describe them almost like spirit guides. Others compare them to guardian spirits. Some believe they represented a part of the witch's own intuition taking symbolic form. And that's actually one of my favorite ways of looking at that. Think about dreams for a moment. I mean, we did the past couple episodes. Our subconscious rarely speaks plain English. It uses symbols and animals, stories, places, characters. Maybe your inner wisdom appears as a raven because ravens symbolize intelligence. Maybe it appears as a wolf because you're learning about healthy boundaries. Maybe it's a snake because you're shedding an old version of yourself. The image matters less than the lesson. Modern witches often describe familiars as an energetic partner rather than a magical employee. And that's another misconception I'd love to clear up. A familiar is not your magical servant. You don't order it around like a tiny supernatural assistant. There's no magical customer service hotline when you submit requests. Hello, yes? I'd like to order one enchanted raven to locate my missing car keys. Thank you. Now, if someone believes they work with a familiar spirit, that relationship is one of mutual respect. It's one of companionship or protection, guidance. It's more like a partnership. In many traditions, familiars help the practitioner stay spiritually grounded. Some people say that they alert them when the energy shifts. Others just feel calmer during rituals when their animal companion is nearby. Some report receiving symbolic messages through dreams featuring the same animal repeatedly. One of the healthiest things about modern paganism is that it leaves room for personal experience without demanding everyone believing the same thing. So let's answer a question that I hear a lot. Can you choose your familiar? The answer is maybe, but probably not in the way that social media sometimes suggests. You can't usually scroll through an adorable kitten photo and declare, "This orange tabby shall now be my familiar." Well, you can, but the cat probably has other plans. Many experienced practitioners believe that familiars choose us. Sometimes it's an adopted pet who unexpectedly becomes deeply connected to your practice. Sometimes it's just a wild crow that visits you every morning for years. Sometimes it's an owl that appears during important moments of your life. Sometimes it's entirely spiritual with no physical animal involved at all. Relationships like that develop naturally. They're not forced, and they're certainly not purchased. And if someone online tries to sell you a guaranteed, authentic, familiar spirit for only $299.99 plus shipping, please keep your wallet in your pocket. That's not how this works. Magic has never been particularly fond of marketing departments. Now here's something I absolutely love. Many cultures believe familiars protected the witch just as much as the witch protected the familiar. Yep, a partnership. One watches over the physical, the other watches over the spiritual. Each benefits from the other's presence. That's actually very beautiful. It reminds us that magic isn't about power over something. It's about relationship. Relationship with nature, relationship with spirits, if that's part of your belief system. Really, it's relationship with yourself. Relationship with the unseen rhythm of the world. And relationships are built on trust, not control. Let's go to Scandinavia. And if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you already know that I have a soft spot for Norse mythology. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm learning, and I'd like to learn a lot more. At the center of it all sits Odin. Now, Odin wasn't a witch, of course, but he was deeply associated with magic, wisdom, divination, prophecy, and the runes. If there ever was a deity who understood the value of a good magical companion, it was Odin. Every morning, his two ravens, Hugin and Munin, okay, I'm going to butcher these, I know I am, and I've already said, I'm still learning Norse mythology, so please forgive me if I do pronounce something wrong. But every morning, his two ravens, Hugin and Munin, flew across the 9 worlds. Their names meant thought and memory. Take a second to appreciate that. That's pretty cool. Not strength and courage, not fire and thunder, but thought and memory. Every evening they returned and whispered everything they'd seen into Odin's ears. Kings rising, battles brewing, secrets spoken behind closed doors. The movement of people, the whispers of the world. Some scholars actually see ravens as symbols of the human mind. Others view them as spirit messengers. Many modern practitioners simply see them as a reminder that wisdom comes from observation. I love that one. Magic isn't always about doing. Sometimes it's just about noticing. But maybe that's why ravens are still considered deeply magical today. They are astonishingly intelligent. They recognize faces. They solve puzzles. They hold grudges. Seriously. Science has documented ravens remembering people who treated them badly years later. Imagine offending a raven and having it tell its raven friends, and suddenly every crow in the neighborhood is giving you dirty looks. That's not a familiar. That's organized bird crime. Now let's travel east. Let's go to Japan. Japan has one of the richest collections of magical animal folklore in the world. One of the best-known creatures is the kitsune, a fox spirit. Some kitsune are mischievous tricksters. Some are protectors. Some are loyal companions. Others serve the deity Inari. The older and wiser a kitsune becomes, the more tails it gains. 9-tailed foxes are considered incredibly powerful. Foxes represent intelligence, adaptability, cleverness, and the ability to move between worlds. Does that sound familiar? Because that is a reoccurring theme with magical companions all over the globe. So let's hop over to Germany. German folklore speaks of household spirits that protected farms and families when they are treated kindly, and some weren't even animals at all. Some were, though. Some were cats, dogs, birds. If respected, they brought good luck. But if insulted, well, let's just say I hope you like your milk a little sour. Maybe you like your bread a lot burnt, and your socks would mysteriously disappear. Speaking of household spirits, Scotland and parts of northern England gave us brownies. Now, not the chocolate kind, although I wouldn't complain if someone left those around the house too. But brownies are small household spirits who quietly completed chores during the night. They swept the floors, mended tools, tidied homes, cared for the livestock. But there was one rule. Never insult them. Never mock them. And absolutely never give them fancy clothing. Because according to the legends, receiving clothes often offended them so deeply that they would just leave forever, never come back. Can you imagine that? You've spent years helping around the house, and finally someone gives you a sweater, and your response would be, well, fuck that, I'm moving out. Let's come back across the Atlantic just for a moment. Appalachian folklore. They have some wonderfully eerie tales involving cats. Actually, Appalachian folklore has some eerie tales about a lot of shit. Many mountain communities believe that certain cats could sense curses before humans noticed anything wrong. Some stories claimed that if a strange cat refused to cross your doorstep, you should postpone your journey. Others believed a cat suddenly staring toward the woods at dusk meant unseen visitors were nearby. Whether those visitors were spirits or fairies or simply just your neighbor coming over unannounced, well, legends leave that part out, but one of my favorite Appalachian traditions involves crows. Some families believe that feeding crows would bring protection. Others believe that crows carried messages between the living and the deceased ancestors. And again, do you notice that pattern? Not evil, not frightening, but connected. And one animal that has had a particularly unfair reputation is the humble toad. Poor toads. Throughout history, they've been blamed for poisons and curses, dark magic, storms, warts, and all manners of mysterious happenings. In European folklore, witches supposedly kept magical toads that could locate herbs or guard treasures or reveal hidden knowledge. Some even claim that toads carried enchanted stones inside their heads called toadstones. These stones were believed to detect poison and bring good fortune. Modern science tells us that that's kind of bullshit, but toads don't contain magical gemstones. That's a little skull with a little brain in it. But I do enjoy the imagery that our ancient villager gently shaking a very confused amphibian. Come on, Gerald, where are you hiding them jewels? Another legendary familiar appears in Welsh folklore. Of course, it's the owl. Today, we often associate owls with wisdom, but in parts of Europe, they also carried an air of mystery because they're nocturnal, they're silent, nearly invisible in flight. They seem supernatural. So imagine you're walking through a forest like centuries ago with no flashlight or street lights, just the moonlight, and then suddenly 2 glowing eyes. A silent, white figure glides overhead without making a sound. Yeah, I'd probably invent a legend too, but actually, my brain just goes back to Labyrinth. I don't know why. But let's talk briefly about spiders. Now, I know, some of you just instinctively looked around the room. Spiders appear in magical traditions all over the world. But not because they're frightening, because they weave. Their webs become a symbol of fate, destiny, creativity, patience, the interconnectedness of life. Some witches considered spiders very lucky visitors to the home. Others saw them as a reminder that every action creates another thread in the great web of existence. That's actually a beautiful metaphor. Now, here's a question I see a lot on social media and the like. Can a familiar be something unusual? Yes, familiars are unusual. Historical accounts mention bees, or butterflies, or owls, ferrets, goats, lizards, rats, snakes, even a multitude of insects. Modern practitioners have described meaningful connections with horses, even dolphins and turtles, wolves in dreams. Someone once wrote, convinced that their emotional support chicken was spiritually gifted. And you know what? I'm not here to judge. Have you ever met a chicken? They have far more personality than a lot of people I know. But here's the important thing. The animal itself doesn't make the magic. The relationship does. A black cat isn't automatically enchanted. A snake isn't automatically wise. But if a particular creature repeatedly inspires you to pay attention, to grow, to heal, to become more aware of your place in nature, then perhaps that relationship carries its own kind of magic. And isn't that really what witchcraft has always encouraged? Awareness, respect, connection, wonder. The world is already astonishing. Magic simply invites us to notice. So what do familiars mean to modern witches? Well, for most modern pagans, Wiccans, witches, the idea of familiars has shifted away from the frightening stories of the witch trials and back to something much older, connection. And that's really the heart of it. A familiar isn't about power. It's not about commanding spirits. It's not proving that you're a real witch. And it certainly isn't a magical status symbol. I know some of you out there, they're like, familiars? I don't know. Well, let me challenge you. The next time you take a walk, leave your phone in your pocket. Seriously, no scrolling, no emails, no social media. Just walk. Notice which birds you hear. Notice the insects. Watch the squirrels climbing trees. Listen to the wind moving through the leaves. Observe how many different forms of life are quietly going about their day. Nature is constantly communicating. Not necessarily in words, but in rhythms and patterns and movement, and even in silence. The more attention you give the natural world, the more connected you feel. Maybe that's where the idea of familiars really began. Not because ancient witches owned magical animals, but because they paid attention. They noticed which birds arrived before the storms, which animals predicted changing seasons, which plants attracted the bees. Observation became wisdom. Wisdom became folklore. Folklore became legend. And somewhere along the way, the familiar was born. Animals have shaped our history every bit as much as we've shaped theirs. And maybe that's real magic. Not spells, not enchantments, not supernatural powers, but relationship and companionship, trust and respect. Those things have always been magical, and I suspect they always will. So the next time your cat curls up beside your book of shadows, or your dog follows you into the garden, or a crow seems to recognize you, take a moment, smile, offer gratitude, whether it's magic or coincidence, or simply one beautiful creature acknowledging another. It's still a gift. And in a world that moves so fucking fast, those quiet little gifts are worth noticing. All right, it's time for question and answers. Okay, so I know this week has been a little busy. It's the 4th of July week. I did put it out there that if you had any questions on familiars to go ahead and email me. But I didn't really get any questions in this week. So, not a problem. I have a lot of questions that you guys have sent in that don't necessarily coincide with the episode being recorded, but that is fine. If you have questions on anything at all, whether I've already covered the topic or not, please send those questions in. I can always pull and read them later on a later episode. And future episodes may go back to something that I had briefly touched on before. And if you had questions about that, it'll already be there for me to pull from. So, Anonymous has sent me an email, and this one is a question on deity. Hello, Crone. You can just call me Anonymous because I'm still figuring all this out. I have been studying paganism and witchcraft for a while now, and I've reached the point where I feel I can begin working with a deity. I've done reading, I've learned history on a lot of different deity, and I narrowed it down to 3, and I genuinely feel drawn to all 3 of them, but I'm kind of stuck. How do I know which one is the right deity to work with? Is it just intuition, or should I be looking for signs? Once I choose one, how even do I begin? Do I just leave an offering and start talking to them? I've also heard people say that a deity can reject you. Is this true? And finally, what does it mean when people say they're working with a deity? Does it mean worshiping them, partnering with them, or something else entirely? Thank you for reading this, and blessed be. From Anonymous. Well, first off, welcome to one of the biggest questions that almost every pagan asks at some point. The fact that you've narrowed it down to 3 tells me that you've already done the most important part. You've taken the time to learn who they truly are instead of chasing whatever deity happens to be popular online at the time. Here are some things that might surprise you. You don't have to get it perfect. Working with a deity isn't like getting married after one date. It's more like building a friendship. You spend time together, you learn about one another, you discover whether the connection grows stronger over time. If you are drawn to 3 of them, spend a month with each one. Read their myths, meditate with them, leave simple offerings that are meaningful to them. Light a candle or say good morning. Tell them about your day. Then listen, not for voices or dramatic visions, but for subtle nudges, recurring thoughts or dreams, or that quiet feeling of, this just feels right. And can a deity reject you? In my experience, it's less about rejection and more about resonance. Sometimes the timing isn't right. Sometimes another deity has lessons that you're meant to learn first. Sometimes there's simply silence. And that answer, too, is okay. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means keep walking. As far as what does it mean to work with a deity, think of it as entering into a relationship built on mutual respect. It isn't about becoming their employee or expecting them to grant wishes on demand. It's honoring them, learning from them, making offerings, allowing their wisdom and their values to shape your own spiritual practice. Some people do worship. Some people simply just honor. Some see them as teachers or guardians or companions. There really is not a correct way. I've heard it also said in a book I read, it says, I don't work with deity, I walk with deity. And that's very powerful too. So don't spend so much time worrying about choosing the perfect deity. Light the candle, say hello, be sincere. The relationship will unfold exactly as it's meant to. And remember this, the gods have been around for a very long time. They're not grading your first impression. Thank you again for sending me your question. And for all of you out there, if you have any questions on anything witchy, please email me at acronepodcast@gmail.com. And if you don't want to give your name, you can remain anonymous, hence the name of the podcast. And today we have a wonderful guest spot. I am truly honored to have met her. Her name is Michelle, and she owns a really cool metaphysical shop called Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, which is also an apothecary and herb store, and it houses the Healing the Root Wellness Clinic. More on the clinic next week. This shop is in a small town in Texas called Liberty. She herself, she doesn't really consider herself pagan, But she is surrounded by all walks of faith. She believes in the power of magic, and she's made her shop a safe place for everybody to be themselves. She has all kinds of everything witchy and then some. So here's Michelle, and don't worry, I'm going to have where to find her and the shop in the show notes. I'm here with Michelle, who owns Brother, Sun, Sister Moon Metaphysical Shop in Liberty, Texas. Michelle, tell me about your shop.
Well, our shop, we started out as a metaphysical supply shop for everyone to have a place to come to get their supplies. I think it's turned into a little bit more than that, because now it's, people come and ask questions, or they have problems and things they need to talk about, or they come to get herb blends for whatever reason, or tinctures, or whatever supplies that we have. So it's just a little bit of everything now. I guess it's still a supply shop, but we just have a little bit of everything.
Thank you so much for creating a safe place for people of all beliefs, of all religions, of all paths, to come into your shop and just feel safe and not feel judged. How did you decide, or what made you create this environment?
Well, to be honest, I am a Christian, and I love when Jesus was here, he spoke to a lot of people, and I don't remember anything in there about him judging anyone. And from what I've studied from a few books that I have, that he went around even, the lost years and stuff, and he went around with his father when he was, carpenter work and all that. But they went to different places and things like that. And one thing I remember is not only in those books, but even in the Bible, it was like whatever their customs were, they kind of learned those customs and went along with those. I don't remember any judging in all that. And I just felt like, I think that's the way we're supposed to be, because I'm going to be honest, I don't know everything. So if anybody comes with a religion or whatever and says that they know it all and their path is the only way, I would question that.
Same here. Do you have an online shop where people can shop? I should have asked you that before.
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's bssmtx.com. BSSM, like Brother, Sun, Sister Moon.
Is there anything else that you want people to know? Like what else your shop offers?
Well, we do have some services. We have our Doctor of Naturopathy, very good about scanning for your health, quantum health analysis. And she's really good about crossing over allopathic medicine into holistic. Very knowledgeable in that. She can help with tea blends to help with whatever ailment you have, or whatever you're wanting. She can make those blends for you. We do readings here as well. Tarot and things like that. We actually do paranormal investigation. So if you have that, that's one thing I like doing, is the paranormal investigation.
Is that open to the public?
It is, actually. We do an interview, though, because, a lot of people might say, oh, my house is haunted, and really the window was open and the breeze came through. So.
And it was going, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm very careful about calling something haunted, because I do a lot of debunking first. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like everyone to know about your shop, or any other services that are offered?
Well, I just really want everyone to know that we're a very welcoming group here, all of us. We're very loving and welcoming. And at any day, someone comes in and I would just, a perfect stranger, before they leave, I give them a hug and tell them I love them. Because, maybe you haven't heard that in a while. So there's that. But I guess that goes into all the non-judging and different walks of life and stuff. I don't know everything, like I said, and I don't know what you're going through. But sometimes we just need a hug. So I just welcome everybody here.
Well, thank you. I loved being here today.
Oh, thank
you have
you.
A beautiful shop. I'm also going to link in the show notes the website for people to come and visit your website and maybe do some ordering and give you a little business that way. Mm-hmm. And the locals, I will also list the address so they can come visit you.
Good deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Veronica, for introducing me to her. And for all of you out there, if you are ever in Liberty, Texas, please check out Brother, Sun, Sister Moon Metaphysical Shop. It's pretty freaking amazing. And if you would like a guest spot on a future episode of Anonymous Crone, please email me at acronepodcast@gmail.com. Now, before I let y'all get back to your day, it's time for this week's Crone's Blessing. May feather and fur walk close by your side, with wisdom to teach and nowhere to hide. May paw prints and wing beats bring joy to your door, and faithful hearts guard you forevermore. May every kind spirit, both humble and small, remind you that magic still answers the call. As always, thank you for pulling up a chair around the cauldron with me. Every week you remind me that this wonderful little community is growing because of curious hearts just like yours, and I couldn't be more grateful to you. Until next time, keep your broom pointed toward adventure. Keep your heart open to wonder. And if a raven starts judging your life choices, just remember they've been watching humans for thousands of years. They've probably earned that right. Until next time, don't forget to thank the creatures who make this world a little more magical, even if they repay you by knocking your favorite crystal off the shelf. Blessed be, and I will see you again next week here at Anonymous Crone.